Now, it looks like, yes, the next Nissan GTR, the R36, is in fact going to be fully electric. I know, it's going to be interesting to see what Nissan is going to do here to try to make this still what it is. A GTR, a very, very special, legendary nameplate. How are they going to make this an engaging drive similar to what we had in the previous GTRs and still be all electric? I don't know. I honestly don't, but that's what we have today. So what we're going to do in this video is have a look at the R32 all the way down to R36, the entire lineup of GTRs. And I'm going to let you know why I think this is such a special car in case you didn't know that already. So before we do that, let's have a look at these articles from Motor One. I'm going to link these two down below. They're hinting, they're sort of warming up their audience or their buyers for an electric GTR. So what they did here, Nissan made an electric GTR R32. Get used to the idea of an electric Godzilla because the R36 will likely be an EV. Now this is the only image that we have here for the R32 electric version. This will be unveiled at the Tokyo Auto Show in January, I do believe. And there are a couple of changes visually to this design. For example, you can see that we have the orange brake calipers here. The fog lights have been removed, and I think the orange brake calipers in combination with these amber indicator lights with this very subtle gray color and the wheels, it's a properly good looking R32, but it's completely electric, so you're not going to hear the beautiful engine noise with the big 3-inch exhaust in the rear. It's so weird to think about. So Nissan has been working on an electric conversion for the GTR R32 since March of 2023. The controversial project is finally ready for prime time. Built by a team of volunteer engineers, the sports car is headed to the 2025 Tokyo Auto Salon, where we won't have an RB26 DETT gas engine under the hood. I mean, that is, to me, the engine in these cars, the engine in the M3, which is also going electric, and the GTR and the Skylines, 50%, 60% of the entire experience is the engine, and that is a huge problem for manufacturers these days if they're going to put these nameplates and turn them EV. So for now, Nissan is sharing only one image. That is this image that we have right here. Visually, it's almost identical to the donor car, but we notice the fog lights have been removed while the brake calipers are now orange. So the spec is great. Beautiful looking R32. I really like the spec here. Since Nissan remains secretive about the technical specifications, we can only speculate for now, assuming it's still all-wheel drive, which I hope it is, because a GTR should, in my book, always be all-wheel drive. The GTR features, because we have so much power and we want to put that plant of power down to the ground. I mean, the R35 is insanely quick 0 to 60 time thanks to the all-wheel drive. The GTR features 2 electric motors. We can assume that it does, 1 for each axle, because we do have the Aria Nismo in Japan, and that is offered with as much as 430 horsepower and 443 pound-feet of torque. And we could sort of assume that that might be the powertrain that Nissan borrows from the Aria to put into this, experimental car. And that is well above the 267 horsepower and 271 pound-feet of torque delivered by the R32's original combustion engine. Me personally, 430 electric horsepower or 276 internal combustion engine powers with explosions and gas and noises and all this stuff, I would still take the 276 horsepower here. In reality, though, this is pretty funny. So the 6-cylinder mill produced much more power, and Nissan intentionally underrated the engine to comply with the gentleman's agreement, something that Japan had back in the day that said that Nissan, Mazda, Toyota, the Supra, the RX-7, they could not have any more power than the 276 horsepower, and that is what they agreed on. However, when you strap a stock R32 onto the dyno, it shows it produced well over 300 horsepower. So sneaky move there by Nissan, but I like it. Fully modified, of course, the RB26 DETT can belt out 2,000 horsepower in this thing. The chassis is just going to start shaking on idle. Nissan has already strongly suggested that the next generation Godzilla will in fact be electric. They say that this is going to be based on the Hyperforce concept. We're going to have a look at that in a minute. 1,341 horsepower. I mean, come on. We don't need 1400 horsepower. It doesn't matter how many horsepower you have. Horsepower is just a small little, a tiny fraction of what, you know, how enjoyable a car is to drive. If you have too much horsepower, it's actually gonna ruin the driving experience. And I think we're getting there when it comes to EVs. I mean, we don't, I don't know, maybe I'm alone here or in the minority, but I don't see how we can push horsepower more than this in cars like this, and you know, to sort of make up for the lack of internal combustion engines. Personally, I would much rather have a 400 horsepower GTR for 2028 or whenever this is coming out, that's lighter than the previous generation, and it would still be, in my opinion, probably much more fun to drive than a 1400 horsepower EV GTR. And they're working on solid state batteries here, so they're trying to make that work before they put it into a potential R36. So let's have a look at this article and the Hyperforce concept. So this is Nissan says this is a tangible dream to achieve by the end of the decade. And here we have it. So an electric GTR by 2030. And this is the design here. This is not my cup of tea, this design. I made a video on this a couple of months ago and said what I thought about this and the challenges that Nissan has when it comes to capturing the soul of all the generations, ever since the R32 up to the R35, capturing that soul in an electric platform. How are they going to do that? That is going to be very interesting to see. The Nissan GTR is as old as dirt, tracing its roots back to 2001 with the Skyline GTR concept. Despite the age, the Japanese supercar had an excellent 2023, with sales shot up by 584% in the United States. I mean, that is crazy number for a car that came out in, I do believe it came out in 2004 maybe, something like that, the R35. And that tells me that, just as I've said, like, people don't really care about having the newest technology when a car is this good. It can be in production for 20 years. It doesn't matter. The same thing happened with the Challenger. Right before the Challenger went out of production, it started selling like crazy because people didn't want it to go out of production, and it was still outselling the brand new Mustang, and it was still outselling the Camaro as well. Two designs that were a lot more modernized than the old Challenger, but for some reason, and that has to do with the design as well, people preferred the Challenger over the Camaro and the Mustang. Now, this spectacular Hyperforce stole the show in Tokyo with its crazy design and the promise of 1,341 horsepower. It had a front and rear motors, all-wheel drive, butterfly fly doors, a pixelated GTR logo in the front end. Now, the company's program design director suggests that the eye-catching concept has a chance of evolving into a production model by 2030. Let me know what you think about this design. I want to hear your opinion. Do you like this design? Do you think it's totally, crazy? Because what Nissan says here, if we go back to the article, you can see that they say the shapes, proportions, and stance aren't based on pure fantasy regarding the feedback received by Nissan after the concept's unveiling. Opinions were mixed. Some suggested that the next supercar should retain a combustion engine, while others reacted quite positively, they say here, to an all-electric setup. Now, I think the people who were positive about this, they're obviously very optimistic people, because I don't think we can have the same vibe that we had. You can't replace an internal combustion engine with EVs when it comes to the spirit of a machine and a car. What car companies need to work on, if they are going to put these cars into production as EVs, they need to work on the connection between human and machine. And that is a connection that is very, very hard to replicate without an engine, because the engine is breathing for you. You can feel that it put it in the effort to move you forward. I've said this before, an EV just feels like you're stepping on it and it goes 0 to 60 in 1.5 seconds, and it doesn't care. It's like, I don't care if you step on the gas. I'm not in you with this. I'm not enjoying this as much as you do. But when you're in the internal combustion engine, you hear the noise, you switch the gears, it takes another breath, and you press the gas, revs goes up. It's a whole different experience with internal combustion engines, which I don't have to tell you guys, because you already know this. Nissan's global product boss, previously said the plan is to wait for solid-state batteries to reach maturity before launching an electric GTR. The company pledges double energy density and triple charging speeds compared to lithium-ion batteries. That is great. These next-gen batteries will power an EV unrelated to any existing model, as an entirely new platform will be required. Now, the thing about, I don't have anything against EVs. It might sound like that when you watch videos like this, but the thing is, take every single car out there, every commuter car, every, going from point A to point B, going back and forth to work, to the gym, grocery store, whatever. You can make all of those EVs. I don't care. It's fine. I think it might be a good idea to do that if we can figure out how we source the batteries and all of that stuff and the charging. But when you have a Nissan GTR, as I said, and a BMW M3 that's also going to come out in an electric version pretty soon, those type of vehicles and those type of models, those are 60-70% about the engine. I mean, the M3 CSL E46, the engine noise there is, I would say, 80% of the experience when you're driving one of those cars. So I would like to see those cars still have at least a hybrid setup or something like that. But we still need the beating heart that sits under the hood in cars like this, in my opinion. This could be a very, very interesting proposition with these new batteries and a brand new platform. So with that said, let's jump into Photoshop and let me show you why I think this, the GTR in general, is such a special vehicle. It feels like I made a review of the R33 once, and I haven't been able to drive the R35 yet, but I really want to review that car. So if I get my hands on one, definitely going to throw it up on the Sketch Monkey channel, and also the R34, of course. Very hard to find a good R34 to review, but the R33, to me, it felt like my old Nissan 200SX, which I used to have back in Sweden. Right after military service, we get sort of a small amount of money for finishing the service, and the first thing I did, I blew the whole amount on an S13 200SX. Not the 240SX that you guys have here in the United States. That is non-turbo. I got the turbo 200SX. And the old, the R33 that I reviewed just felt like that raw power, mechanical feeling when you're switching the gears, and everything is shaking and it's loud, and I love that about these cars. Now, looking at the R32 here, the thing about the GTR is if you remove the wing, it sort of becomes just a normal Japanese coupe. It doesn't look very special if you remove the wings and sort of the front spoiler, the aggressive front spoiler, and the exhaust pipes, and maybe switch out the wheels to more, normal looking wheels. But that's what I think is so special about this car, specifically the R32 and the R33. If you see the R33 here without a wing, it looks very normal. It doesn't look like anything special at all. But then you slap the wing on here, the wheels, the side skirt in the lower section, and it becomes a beast of a machine. Personally, I would 100% switch out these wheels, because as you can see, we have a big, huge gap here. I would switch out the wheels and lower it maybe by an inch or maybe an inch and a half. The differences to me between the R32 and the R33 is the R33 looks like it went to the gym. It turned into a bodybuilder. And it just I don't know what it is about it, because when you look at them, they look very similar. But to me, this is more like similar what happened to the Supra, the Mark III and the Mark IV, right? So the Mark III looked very thin, athletic, and then the Mark IV came out, beefy, bulky. The same thing exact happened here with the R32 compared to the R33 down here. Beautiful design. And then, of course, we have the R34. Now, this is probably, to a lot of people, the most special GTR, and I can definitely see why. I think it's a beautiful looking design. Love these wheels. These are wheels that I would not switch out compared to the R32 and the R33 up here. These are definitely wheels that I would keep stock on the R34. I would like to have it in what's it called? The blue color. It has a very cool name. I think it's called Bayside Blue. That, in addition to some golden accents, for example, the brake calipers right here. You have a big aggressive front bumper here with these intakes on the side, and it just looks like a proper Fast and the Furious car. And this is probably my favorite, personally as well, my favorite GTR. If I were to pick one, is going to be a Bayside Blue R34 with probably, maybe I would switch out the wheels. I'm not sure, but maybe have these be golden or sort of bronze colored. I think that would look absolutely fantastic. And then we have this legend right here, still in production today. The biggest change here compared to the previous ones is, look at the roofline. The roofline became a lot more aggressive, almost like a visor design, Koenigsegg design here for the R35, and I love this design. Super beefy. We have this shoulder line here, very sharp, and love the rear end. Look how sharp everything is. Everything sits flush in the rear end with the hollowed out pieces for the taillights. Wheels look nice as well, and then we have this big, beautiful fender in the front end right here going into this line and then cuts into the rear axle. It's a beautiful looking design, super aggressive, and still today they've updated this so many times now for 2024, the Nismo version for 2024, for example, that I still think it's a modern, it still works today. And I mean, sales are up 580% for 2023 in the United States. That just tells you that this is still a very, very hot model, similar to what we had. The numbers are similar to what we had for the Dodge Challenger right before it went out of production. The numbers just skyrocketed, and it was still outselling the Camaro and the Mustang, even though the design had been around for since 2007. Again, just shows you that people, if it's a good design, the design can last 20 years, no problem, and still make money for the company. Now, this is the new Hyperforce here, and when I look at this design, it doesn't even look like a car to me. It doesn't have the emotional feeling that I'm looking for in a car design. I do like the greenhouse a lot. I think the greenhouse, this top piece right here, looks beautiful because it has this visor design, as you can see. But the rest of the body, this entire, like, it feels like a sheet metal, just a piece of sheet metal that they put together, and not a lot of styling going on. It's just big panels, and how this front end protrudes all the way, like super underbody design. Not a fan of this design at all, and I do hope Nissan switches this up before it goes into production. The wheel design looks like typical EV designs where you have just a plate covering everything on the car. So it's going to be interesting to see what Nissan is going to do. First of all, with the solid state batteries that they're working on right now, they say the new GTR will be in production by the end of the decade, so 2028, 2030, something like that. And if they make it into an EV, first of all, it's going to be interesting to see what BMW is going to do with the new electric M3, because they have a huge task on their hands. M3 fans, the E46 CSL metallic, engine noise, that is what M3, people like and love about the cars. It's almost 50, almost 60% the engine in an M3. So removing that and putting in electric drivetrains in the M3 is going to be interesting. Maybe Nissan is going to take some inspiration from that and see how that goes first, and just let BMW be the first one to put out a legendary nameplate and turn it into an EV before they go full in on this electric GTR. But nevertheless, it's going to be very interesting to see where we're headed with EVs, specifically when companies now are taking these type of cars and try to make them electric. It's going to be a very interesting future for electric sports cars.